All right, welcome everybody to Monday's expert interview. The rising need for affordable, durable, and resilient homes. Improving resiliency, maintaining affordability, building safe, strong, durable homes is a challenge around the world. As natural disasters are on the rise and the homeless crisis continues to beg for solutions, what can be done and who can do it? So today on Dave Cooper Live, we are bringing on an expert in this, Ken Caligar, CEO, RSG 3D. So before we bring him on, though, we got to thank all of our sponsors for allowing us this opportunity to keep showcasing all of these experts from around the world who are building it better. So here's a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Carson Holmquist and the team at Stream Logistics are experts in high-stake freight. They are the perfect choice for projects with timelines and a specific delivery sequence, shipments with high complexity and unique constraints. The new methods of construction need new transportation solutions, and they are up for the challenge. Visit them at streamlogistics.com. CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Brave Control Solutions, where offsite manufacturing systems that do more than just improve productivity. They have a unique approach to industrialized construction, a lineup of flexible automation systems specifically designed for the construction industry, empowered by CAD to Fab, and turnkey solutions for 3D volumetric assembly, structural insulated panels, finished wall assemblies, MEP component processing, assembly, kitting, and storage. Learn more at thinkbrave.com. All right. Well, big thank you to our sponsors once again. So let's hop into it and let's bring Ken Caligar onto the show. Ken, how are you today, my friend?
Good morning, Dave, or good afternoon where you are. I'm great.
Yeah. You're in the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. So it is pretty much morning for you, 10 a.m. My guess is you're a pretty early riser to begin with, though.
Yep. We have work to do every day, right?
That's it. So today is President's Day here in the United States, where we celebrate and honor all of those who served as presidents of the United States. But we also celebrate leadership. And now more than ever, we really need leaders, good ones, where their vision is clear and desire to follow them is strong. And speaking of strong, building safe, strong, durable homes is a challenge around the world. Can we improve resiliency and maintain affordability of our homes and our buildings, Ken?
100%. It's almost easy.
You make it sound easy just by the way you said that. So why don't you elaborate on it? What do you mean it's almost easy? If it's so easy, why does it seem so hard?
The technologies are all here. Okay. RSG 3D happens to be maybe the world's strongest building system for a building envelope, but there are plenty of guys, plenty of companies out there that are attacking this issue of resilience. And at the end of the day, resilience is the critical issue in infrastructure, right? The built environment is our cocoon. It keeps natural disaster out. It keeps pollutants out. It keeps the sun off us or the cold from getting to us. That is your cocoon in which you live and in which you thrive. Without that, you're really swimming against the tide. Life just gets very, very hard. And look, at the end of the day, there is nothing more costly to the idea of sustainability than a natural disaster or non-resilience, because you're rebuilding forever and you're throwing emergency money at it at the rate of 10 or 20 to 1 the dollars that you would have to put into resilience to stop those consequences up front. But the technologies are there, Dave. I mean, you survey the world on this, and you know that for a fact. We're one of them. But there's a lot of great building products out there. At some point, I'll draw the difference between a building product and a building system. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of contributors to this at this point. And I think the holdback is on the builder side primarily.
Right.
It's also a little bit on the consumer side, although the consumer will tell you that they want resilience, they want sustainability, they want a healthy home, they want a long-term affordable home, they want a legacy home, they want to live in something special. At the end of the day, it's the first cost conversation hits you all the time, right? For a builder, attacking first cost, meaning the lower price, simply allows him to sell more houses. He's got a bigger audience to sell to, right? For every $5,000 of price increase, it prices out maybe 1 million customers in the U.S. So they're always driving that, and that's been frankly a historical problem, at least since 1950. And I think that's gotten us really primarily to where we are. My view, and I think probably you share it, this is that the cost of the building up front is a less important fact than the cost of the building during its life cycle.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And you touched on something when you were, talking earlier about the natural disasters that are happening. I mean, if we look at all the wildfires, throughout California and other parts of the United States, and then we take into account what happened around the other side of the globe, Turkey, Pakistan, that area where there was 40,000 plus people died in that earthquake that happened. I mean, this is a really, really big topic. And it like you said before the show, I mean, it's bound to happen here eventually as well.
Well, it happens every day. I mean, we're on a live planet in a solar system where we're affected by a lot of things.
Right.
So on that notion, let me just interject this. So 40,000, souls have died in Pakistan approximately. The after effects will kill multiples of that. All right. So the history of natural disasters, and you can go way, way back, start with Vesuvius or one of the early recorded histories, is that the impact is terrible, but the aftermath is worse on human suffering. There's a great book by Dr. Lucy Jones called The Big Ones. I think she published it maybe almost 10 years ago, but she was the U.S. Geological Survey head in California and did a huge kind of mega disaster study for Mayor Garcetti at the time in Los Angeles. But the book itself will give you kind of a great history of natural disasters and the proper and improper responses to it that came after various earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, etc. Every natural disaster does create a brief shining moment where everybody gets on board and says, we should build resilient. And it generally results in higher code values, right? So after Andrew in Florida in 92, it resulted in higher code values there. After Katrina in 05 in the Gulf, it did again. And after Superstorm Sandy in New York, it did. And frankly, in Northern California, they're even starting to, they're starting to get it. The nickel is, starting to drop in here that this is bad. But, the human consequences of this is terrible. We're actually still in rebuilding of homes that were lost in October of 2017 in Northern California. That's 5 years ago, over 5 years ago. And the displacement of these poor people, essentially, the kids, for the first year and a half, they don't go to the same school. I mean, it's crazy. We're failing on a policy level in a broad, huge, shameful way in the United States with our built environment. We have the lowest disaster resilient rating of any industrialized country in the world. In the top or the worst 10 disaster resilience countries, and this was from a study by Global Humanitarian Assistance that basically has ranked the impacts to population around the world from natural disasters. The U.S. sits in a group of China, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Philippines, Ethiopia, and I forget one or two others. But we're the only industrialized country that exposes our citizenry to the wrath of natural disasters.
So, and what causes that, right? We talk about code. Is it the lobbying power that's going after, that lobbies for the right codes for their products? I've had this conversation several times. And
Mhm.
at what point does the code start changing in favor, I guess, of the people that are living in these buildings versus the people that are selling and building and making a profit?
Well, yeah, that's your big issue, I think. I think that's one of your big issues. Not to be a history major again, but you know, the rise of insurance in the U.S.
Hmm.
um, started in the 1700s. Ben Franklin was one of the early insurance agents or
Right.
CEOs. And back in the day, and it usually started in like the port cities of New York and maybe Philadelphia and the East Coast and whatnot. And it was all about fire insurance. Okay. And the way they used to underwrite was they would go to every building and see how it was built. And that was the proper way. And then many, many years later, the federal government got involved in some other things. And it went, the insurance industry went through certain changes and insurance, consortiums formed and whatnot. And it got kind of mandated that everybody would basically get the same policy. Well, okay. I mean, it's just crazy. It's faulty decision making. If my building is, built with steel and concrete and your building is built with paper, who's got a higher fire rating? Yet we're carrying the same insurance, right?
Right.
Which makes no sense. Later, they went to kind of multi, risk stuff where they put every risk into one policy and whatnot. And consumers loved it. It was a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier than binding flood and fire and this and that, right? But along the way, really in the 1950s, we went into a huge building boom in the U.S. I mean, we built more in the 50s than we have in any decade since. And that also coincided with kind of suburban sprawl, right? What happened, I think, during that period, and I'm no expert on this, but I've read, a fair amount about it, is that builders were able to take advantage of more rural type building codes than they could have gotten in the cities, right? Because of density. Your risk basket, you put more eggs into one basket in a tight city in an urban environment, you got a higher risk, ratio on that than you do out in the, in the farm layer where one house might get hurt. That's a bad thing for the house, but it's not a mega disaster, right? Because of the, the lack of density. In any event, so, builders started taking advantage of these lower code opportunities, and then they just built concentrated cities in the suburbs at lower code. So I live in Long Island. I mean, it might as well be a country. It's so crowded. But we have codes that are like a bad joke, right? Anyway, so I think there's been a whole long kind of evolution in here in which the driving force has been cost, driven primarily by builders. The lobbying is unbelievable. I mean, the amount of lobbying is just incredible. All wood gets tariff relief and all kinds of supplemental support from the government. Concrete and steel don't, but that's right. That's a better way to build, and it's because they've got a great lobbying effort. We've got 96% or 95% of the single family homes in the U.S. that are built with wood, and they're a natural disaster haven. Think of it this way. So this is too long an answer, but I want to say this if I can. There's $45 trillion worth of built environment in the U.S. 35 trillion of that is multifamily, single family homes. Okay. So that's your largest component, and that's your worst built systems. Now, 75% of that, 77% of that will be rebuilt or renovated massively in the next 25 years. So that means we're already at a bad resilience deficit here. We're way underbuilt in terms of our resilience capacity. And over the next 25 years, we're going to build at least $25 trillion worth of home assets. And they will concentrate even more, right? There's just more people moving right? So we should not be having codes built for the 1930s and 40s in rural America. We need codes that are built for concentrated areas like urban and large scale suburban that are built for 2050.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Right.
the difference is the chasm is staggering. On a policy level, we have mandated the gasoline consumption of cars, have on a go forward basis. We have to get more mileage, year in and year out. And that's been very, very helpful to climate change. In fact, you've reduced a lot of the car emissions since the
Right.
70s when I was a kid and we were choking. And you also have feed-in kind of programs in zero net energy,
Right.
where you have zero is in resilience, and that's your critical element. So my view is we need to how do we take the determination that we have around climate change and focus it on the fundamental issue of building envelopes, building cocoons, protecting our built environment, and protecting human life. That's the critical element.
Sure. Well, here, I've got an article here I wanted to put up here that just looked up. U.S. housing market is overvalued by billions due to ignored flood risk. This is an example of what you were just talking about.
Sure.
And that's February 16th, 2023. So, I mean, that should say a lot right there, no?
Well, look, the history of insurance, again, is the history of a lot of insurance bankruptcies, if you follow, right? And what causes an insurance bankruptcy? A concentrated,
Right.
disaster, right? Whether it was the fire in 1900 in San Francisco or, the Galveston hurricane or something. I mean, it puts companies out of business. These insurance companies are not fools. They
Right.
they can do their
They're
math.
not.
And if California is burning down, you have two options. You either massively jack the rates, like 400% out there we see, or you just walk from the market, or you do some combination thereof. Now, it's an interesting thing. Again, we actually have a really good board member on our board, David Shu. He was an architect builder, and then he got into firefighting, and he was a staff chief on CAL FIRE for many years. And he was one of the first guys to start doing wildfire forensics. He now has a company called Wildfire Defense Works. So they do all the WUI planning for cities and whatnot, the wildfire urban interface situation. And the WUI situation is just what we talked about. It's urbanization. Use a different term. It's concentration, right? You can't afford to live in San Francisco, so now you're concentrating in Santa Rosa or Oakland or someplace else, right? So you've collected more assets into a very vulnerable wildfire urban interface. That's a recipe for disaster, and that's what they've been incurring. Anyway, so the insurers are walking away. The insurers are going to walk away from Florida. A friend of mine uses a phrase that insurers are the code officers of last resort. And I thought it was pretty smart because basically when the insurers walk, finally the policymakers get it.
That's right.
Right? It's not supposed to be that way. You mentioned the word leadership. Okay, where is it? Right? It shouldn't have to be, I'm running from the market and nobody gets insurance, Mr. Government, or you should do something about it. I'm semi-hopeful that people will start to get this. There's a lot of good, kind of glimmers on the horizon. Yeah. There's certainly from our side of the world, a lot greater supply, a lot greater focus on solving this problem. The leadership is a massive failure. And, I got nothing good to say about, government programs whatsoever. But that's my own thing.
Sure. Well, let's kind of dive into what we're going to do here as well. But I also want to share this, since we are talking about resiliency, we are talking about, natural disasters around the world. Ken, one of the blessings that we have on this show is we have people that watch our show globally. We're talking Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, you name it, around the world, Europe, Australia, doesn't matter. Even Russia, we have people, that tune in even today and send us comments. But, the big earthquake that happened, Syria being the main one. And I'm going to put it up here because I was asked if I could share this, and we always like to share. So this is a donation that people can make since we are talking about building it better. This is what happens when we don't. Now, again, a lot of people may say, well, this is a different country and the codes and I mean, there's all these reasons. But this is what happens when it's not done right. and you end up with over 40,000 people, dead, and so many more homeless, right? Or motherless and fatherless, and all of those things. So I wanted to put this up here at the request of one of our good friends from over there, that they're trying to raise money to help all these people. So there you have it. Go to Sam's fundraise.givesmart.com. There's the link and everything. Jennifer will post it in the post as well. So what do we do, Ken? I get it. There's the problem. We all know the problem's there. We all know the problem's not changing overnight. We definitely all know that the policies are not changing overnight, but that doesn't mean that we can't do it better ourselves. That doesn't mean we have to wait for the codes to change or the government to change, does it?
No, absolutely not. If I can tell you this from our experience. So real quick, RSG3D is a structural concrete insulated panel that incorporates a steel truss system and expanded polystyrene for insulation. It is the structural building envelope. It's ICC certified. We've been in 20 countries over 30 years. We've probably had about 6,000 or 7,000 constructions, and we've never suffered a natural disaster. We were the only homes in Florida to survive Hurricane Andrew in 1992. In fact, they were Jimmy Carter homes for Habitat. God bless Jimmy. I saw on TV just 2 days ago when they were reporting, President Carter's health. They were showing some of his second act as a Habitat guy, and there were actually videos of him holding the panel, which was cool. In any event, so we've survived hundreds and hundreds of hurricanes with thousands of units with no damage. We survived California wildfires, being the only homes to do that, and we survived probably 10,000 plus seismic events. We even have NATO ballistic ratings on our panels because we supplied to the Army in Iraq and Afghanistan. So there are products like ours that are fully available. Let me rephrase. We're a building system for that building envelope, okay? And that's the differentiation. There's a lot of building products out there that go after one discrete issue. I was talking with AIG Insurance the other day, and we were talking about that connection between the wall and the roof, right? That pulls off in every hurricane. And the amount of companies and the amount of technology that's trying to go in to solve that one little spot is impressive. But there are products out there that will do that. And we take a more systems approach. But all of these products work, right? They massively change your risk ratio. And the difference between getting being able to survive 110 mile an hour wind and surviving 130 mile an hour wind is very, very dramatic in terms of how many years you're going to survive, because there's a lot more of the smaller ones than there are the big ones.
Right.
So anything that you can do incrementally is helpful. IBHS does, a lot of testing on products, and they have their Fortified program. And I always commend that. They will not test, by the way, structural concrete insulated panel because they know it's deterministic. They know we're stronger than what they've got. So that, again, is an industry thing, right? That, again, is essentially a lobbying effort. But anything you can do to be more resilient, whether you're doing a smart WUI plan around your house, right, a fire prevention plan, or whether you're adding a couple of building products to your building. But if I could, give anyone advice, it's just, as a consumer, change your focus slightly from the kitchen to the building system that your family is in, right? This is your largest financial asset. It's where all your love is. It's all about your family. It's about your future. A couple $1,000s more into that and a couple $1,000s less into something that's glossy and glitzy and will change, with the fads, is probably a good piece of advice. But I do think, Dave, that we're now at the point that we can build a resilient building at about the same cost, if not the same, with stick built on single family homes. In multifamily, we're definitely cheaper, less expensive on a first cost than building traditional. In commercial, we're definitely less expensive.
Sure.
In custom, I think we're at parity. And I mean, RSG3D and probably the industry is pretty close to that. ICF has done a good job of getting their costs down, I think. I still think that's a little bit of a complicated process and not for everybody. But we're there. We're on that threshold. There's no penalty to this. And look, at the end of the day, the math that you need to do is, what is your overall operating cost of a building? If you own your home for 30 years, you're going to pay, let's say it's a $500,000 home. You're going to pay 500 grand for that. If you have a traditional mortgage, you're going to spend 300 K on interest over 30 years, right?
Right.
You're going to spend another $250,000-$300,000 on maintenance and insurance. So you're going to spend more on maintaining that home than you are upfront. If you can lower your operating costs, right? Get something like ours that's darn close to zero maintenance. Every house right now, actuarially, a new house is supposed to be putting aside 1% of the cost of the house for future maintenance. You got $1 million house, that's 10K a year. And in terms of energy, you know, we've had electric rates go up 35-40% nationally. They're not stopping.
Right.
And so, sure, solar is smart, but get a building envelope that's really, really tight. And then you only need about half a solar system. We're getting hurt on an energy front. We're getting HERS ratings on our buildings around 40. So that means it's 60% less than a brand new stick-built building standard.
Sure.
And that's, you know, if you're spending $5,000 a year on energy, and that's probably a low number now, we just saved you $3,000. Well, that's $100,000 over 30 years. It's not nothing. Plow that back into your mortgage, you can own a bigger house. Plow that back into healthcare or, you know, something else. It definitely helps the family.
Yeah, it helps it move forward for sure. And like you said, that 1% adds up. I mean, what's the average medium household income across the country now to buy a house? Is right around the $400,000 mark last I checked. So that's $4,000 a year just in maintenance fees that you gotta, you know, save up every year to maintain that. But you still have the consumer, Ken. We still have I know, but those hardwood floors and granite countertops, and I really love those gold faucets. And it's like nobody ever thinks about the building envelope or the better windows, and until they move into the house, and then they go, I can't believe I had to replace every pane of window in my house because they're leaking. They put in and then the finger pointing begins, and you go, well, I told you so.
Right. No, you listen, you're 100% right on that. We're hoping to start kind of a marketing advertising program in the next 6 months in here. And it will basically be kind of a barbell approach. We will be marketing to developers and architects on the professional level. Yep. But I also think it's important to go after just general consumer marketing. Right?
Sure.
Because look, I can tell you that we get inquiries to the website virtually every day. I get calls. My phone is on the website. Big mistake. So I get 5 calls a day. In any event, I would say that about 70% of the incoming phone calls have made their determination to use our product or right on the edge of it because they've done their research. Mm-hmm. People understand their issues. They understand. You understand when your home is costing you an arm and a leg. I had a friend tell me that their January heating bill was $800 more than last January.
Right.
I mean, this is a mild winter, and it's just because of the cost of electric, right? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money, especially when you get into kind of the average median income or slightly less than that, right? That becomes a big issue. People can't recover from those things. You know, the average American has $2,000 in their checking account or something like that, or $400. It's just some very, very low number, and they are literally going paycheck to paycheck. You can't absorb these small whacks, let alone a real one.
Sure.
So I do think the consumer is very able to identify their issue. They may not know the term resilience. They may not have a definition in their head for it. There's the green term, the sustainability term. Nobody really, I think the vast majority of people don't have a fixed definition for that, but they know that their houses are misserving them. The house is a system made up of products, and that system exists within another system called your neighborhood, and that exists within another system called your town or whatever, and eventually your nation. So you have to build fundamentally, from the beginning through, and the attributes flow through the whole way, right? But I do think the consumer understands their problems.
I think they do too, but I think most of them understand it when the pain really gets hard. Like when we really talk about natural disasters, that's when the I guess the rubber, really meets the road for a lot of people. Also depending on what the market is and where they live. We had a nice trip over to Switzerland this past year, and CEO from DM Bau, Bjorn Ulrich, They're a modular builder over there, but they use concrete and they're doing all the McDonald's in Switzerland right now.
Oh, cool.
And he said, you know, a house that doesn't need to be rebuilt is the most sustainable house. What's your
Agreed.
thoughts
100%.
on that?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, he probably sounds very smart with a, Swiss accent and stuff like that, but
He did
you know,
sound smart.
in any language, that is 100% right.
Yeah.
There's a great book by a guy named Aris Papadopoulos called Resilience is the Ultimate Sustainability, I think.
Mhm.
Get that thing on Amazon if you really want to understand resilience. He's a bright man. Used to run a concrete company and is very, very helpful. But it's like that, that old food pyramid or the hierarchy of needs. If you do not start with resilience, the energy efficiency is a nicety that's going away someday. The healthfulness or the, like you say, the fancy kitchens, the marble or whatever, it's all going. It's not going to do you any good when it's in a heap or in ashes.
That's right. That's right. Let's look at a couple comments here real quick, and then I want to talk a little bit more about just your product in general, so people understand what you do. This is a conversation really just on what the problem is, but you have a real solution to that. And I think what's fun about this conversation, Ken, is you also have a passion for it. Right. There's a difference between having a product and, hey, it could, it's a good solution to a problem versus the difference between, hey, I have a product and you believe in helping provide the solutions to problems, and you live and breathe it, and you have for years and years that we've been talking. And it was nice to run into you and see your display at the International Builder Show in Las Vegas and all these other great things. So I do appreciate you being on here. Gregory says codes are resisting keeping up with new advanced technology. Therefore, the builders don't want to change the way they build. Yes, that's true. 100%. Why change if it ain't broke is what a lot of people, or I've always done it this way, or we've tried that and it didn't work. There's so many reasons why our industry is in last place.
Correct.
A little snarkiness from Henry Mickelberg across the pond. Henry, good to see you. The disparity between the rhetoric of those in the U.S. demanding code changes and the reality of the EU and UK, where the governments are changing the building regulations, is palpable. Palpable. Can you say that word? Palpable. I can't get it out. Yeah. Seriously, the U.S. government needs to grow a set and start mandating code changes. Well said, Henry. I don't even know where to go. Palpable. I can't even say it. Maybe somebody can help me in the audience here with that one. Greg did say also, Ken, you were spot on. There's a few ways to approach this need. Driving the consumer to the builder will speed up change in the building marketplace.
Yes.
So, you know what? We've talked about this, and I say this all the time, right? We need to take the same approach, and I always use the pharmaceutical industry this way, right? Because there was a time the pharmaceutical industry sold their drug by sending the doctors on vacation and buying them fancy things, and hey, come on. Well, then the government put the kibosh on that.
Right.
So what did the pharmaceutical companies do? They turned to the television and the consumer and said, ask your doctor for my purple pill, right?
That's 100% right.
And that's exactly what happened. So they got the consumer to start asking for I don't know if they're better products or not, but they went to the consumer and got the consumer involved to demand to their doctor, hey, you didn't tell me about this product. I want to know about it.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's part of our marketing. We have to build the professional cadre of experts out there with architecture and engineering and building and developing. But at the same time, our client is the consumer.
Yeah.
Right? It's the client who doesn't even know they're the client. It's the daughter and the son who are in the playroom during the storm. That's the client.
Yeah. When we were traveling in the motorhome across this country, and we were in a motorhome, and I can tell you, when you're in a motorhome and all of a sudden the tornado whistles go off everywhere, it really matters at that very moment. You're looking for the storm shelter. You're looking for that. And I think the funny part was, until we did this trip, you don't realize how much of a threat that is across this country, because it happened regularly for us.
Yes.
And in the nights it happened where I didn't look to see where there was shelter, where the nights you sit there, and I did some YouTube or Facebook lives, a few times, and I'm standing there in the dark, the lightning and then the motorhome shaking, and I'm just praying. I'm like, where are you going to go? So that's just a prime example. It's not a little problem. It's across the globe, and it's just not earthquakes. It's just not hurricanes. It's tornadoes and it's fires. It's flooding, because that's one thing we didn't talk about: floods. How does a product like yours even help with floods?
We've been through multiple floods. At the end of the day, this is an inorganic system. It's concrete and steel.
Yeah.
And it is a monolithic build. So you've got, the panel for the walls, intermediate floors, and roof. And so there's continuous concrete on the outside and the inside of the wall, which creates a lot of, attributes. It is your durability layer on the outside.
Sure.
So we've been, we're actually doing a program for the Four Seasons Resort in Costa Palmas, Mexico. Really, really high-end resort right on the beach. And one of those homes got flooded September of 21, about 3 feet deep. They shoveled out the muck, power washed it, and they lost some, woodwork in the kitchen, some millwork.
Right.
But 7-8 days later, they were back in business. And for instance, concrete block buildings down the beach still smell like mold and mildew because they're more porous.
Right.
We had a building that was flooded during its construction in 1995, in which this is true, and you can see it on YouTube on RSG 3D. 45% of the foundation of that building was undercut by erosion, such that the footers were hanging in the air. You could walk under the building. Well, the building just cantilevered. It didn't fold like wood would, or even concrete block, because it's a system, because it's a monolithic system with concrete, and truss systems in every 4 inches. So you got a steel truss system here. You can't pull this thing apart. Likewise, we had a building, actually, small building. It was actually a telecom shelter, 8x16 building for the base station of the cell phone tower. We used to deliver those around North America and Central America and Mexico. For the build out of cell phone towers back in the day, and they hold some critical equipment. We had we had a truck overturn and stuff rolled down the mountainside. Well, they're cubes, so there was no damage. They managed to pick them up and deliver them.
Right.
Try doing that with a wood frame house. It's not going to happen.
No.
So look, that's our system, and it is a system for that building, that critical environmental barrier. You can do anything you want inside that building, right? Throw pillows on the ground and live that way, or live in the most elaborate manner you want. But we solve the critical issue.
So just so other people understand, I'm gonna put your cut view on the page here, right? I mean, this isn't overly complicated.
No.
I mean, the process in which you put it together and the automation on how the steel goes together with the insulated panels, right? That's complicated, but the theory behind all of this is not that complicated. So why don't you just take 2 seconds, and so our audience really understands what you're talking about. I mean, this is one example, but there's other examples out there as well. But your system in of itself is just wire mesh and some insulation panels and concrete, right?
Exactly right. It's very, very simple. It's pretty low cost, and it can be scaled.
Right.
I mean, we can do thousands and thousands of homes a year presently, and we're looking to expand. And so the manufacturing is precise, not necessarily difficult, but precise. And so that's very important. But the beauty of the system is that it's really, really simple once you get it into the field. So every panel is made bespoke for where it goes in the building. So it's a giant Lego kit. So for instance, down in Houston right now, we have some 7,500 square foot, 3-story homes. They're using 39-foot wall panels. So they're able to frame very large expanses of the buildings in very, very short order, because the panels are light, and you apply the concrete in the field later. So there's 2 issues, going back to say, Syria, Turkey, and some of these natural disasters. There's 2 issues here. And one is obviously the codes that we've been talking about and the way we have to improve that. The other is the execution of the system. Okay. So if you're in a wood frame building, you've got about 10 to 12 layers in your wall. And the reason why you have that is because the neighbor next to it's not doing a full system job, right?
Right.
So the stud may be doing something while the batten insulation is doing something, but it's not enough insulation. So you use the secondary or third, layer of insulation, and you've got, vapor barriers and water barriers and siding and drywall and tape and paint and the whole 9 yards, right? So the whole thing becomes a complex mess of thousands and thousands of products that are ending up in a building system that you think that first of all, you have signed up for at base building code, right? And now your labor is going to have to make that thing perfect for it to even perform at base building code.
Right.
It doesn't happen, as we both know, right? It just doesn't happen. So, one of the problems in Turkey is, I don't know what the codes are, but they sure as hell cut corners there. And that seems to be the major allegation against all these builders and developers. Builders will be a little tricky. If you're building a home, get on them and make sure you know what's going on, because, they're looking at the bottom line a little bit. But the problem with many of these building the problem with wood at this point is just too darn complex. It's too costly. There's too many things going into there. Your labor costs are difficult. Your supply chain is impossible. And it's just too freaking complex. Mm-hmm. RSG is panel plus concrete. We go from generally 5 or 6 trades in a wood frame building to 2 in a panel building. We go from 6 inspections in a wood frame building to 1 in an RSG panel building. So fewer materials, nothing to muck up because we take care of the very precise manufacturing. The assembly process is easier and faster by far than any crew has experienced in woodland. Right. So, not only are we exceeding code by, giant leaps and bounds, you really can't mess it up.
So, that's interesting, right? Because the concrete is the interior of your wall then.
Yes. Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah. And concrete on the exterior and the interior can be finished any way you want. Yeah. But the concrete on the interior actually has a very, very beneficial energy attribute and also sound attribute. So in terms of energy, the big thief of your energy dollar is air exchange, right? Yeah. You condition your air inside and it ends up outside, or, reverse. The second part is insulation, where you have gaps like batten and whatnot, right? And in a wall, you have studs, and that's a negative R value. So that robs from your entire wall performance. With an RSG building, you have continuous insulation. You have absolutely zero air gaps. In fact, you have to bring in fresh makeup air. And then you have that thermal mass on the inside. So that's like passive house, right? Yeah, sure. So you're living in a thermal mass. And so in a hot environment, your HVAC cools you to 72 and shuts off. The walls are at 72. That means as the room starts to heat up from human activity or appliances or just some sun gain or something, the walls start to give back its coolness. So you end up with very, very wide cycles of HVAC instead of the HVAC pinging up and down all day long and blowing dust around and, creating a little background noise. They're off for long periods of time as that wall gives you its battery of energy back. It's interesting. I was surprised when I started. I bought this company in 2018, and one of the things that surprised me after that was I would meet people who have been in these buildings for 10, 20 years, and almost always their first reaction was, the first thing I thought about your building was it's very quiet, it's very peaceful. Yeah. And I would have thought it was something else. But in terms of the wall, yeah. So you got a thermal mass of concrete in there, and then just finish it any way you want. These homes we just came from in Houston, beautiful, almost glass-like plaster. But you can finish it any way you want. We have prisons in the state of Georgia. They throw some paint on the wall. Sure. We have very contemporary buildings in Southern California where they want the raw concrete look. We've even done Adobe style. So any style in the world is available here. And one of the nice things I'll just mention quickly as a commercial here with the panel is you can curve these panels and radius them and stuff like that. So we have a LEED Gold building, municipal building in Southern California that does not have a single straight wall in it. All the walls are radiused. There's domes. They're off plumb to get passive house shade effect. It's a brilliant building done by Patel Architecture. But we have many, many homes. I just saw one yesterday in Malibu up here where we have curved roofs. Just unique architectural features you'll never get done with wood.
So let me ask you one last question. We're running short on time here, right? And then I'll put a couple more comments up. Um, ADUs are a big thing right now,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Yes.
ADUs are a big thing. Some would say we don't have a 5 million house shortage because they're not accounting the ADUs that are in the market right now, right? That was Dr. Dietz, the head economist in the NAHB, was saying to us at one of our events that we had. And that may or may not be true, but the reality of it is, California being one of them, the homeless crisis is through the roof. Why not make ADUs out of this? Can you ship these? Could you build these and actually ship them on a truck done?
We can build up to a relatively small unit because the concrete gets, heavy, and the truck has its own dimensions that you can't
Right.
violate. But in fact, I'd love to do an entire show about this. We have a company, a subsidiary company, strategic business unit called Resilience ADU.
Mhm.
And in fact, that's exactly what we do. We take the same panels that are in the LEED Gold building and the Four Seasons and put them into a kit house ADU. We're about actually to launch a capital round to expand that. But I've looked at every ADU company out
Right.
there. There's not a single company in ADU land that has a resilient building show.
I
We're
love
it.
it.
We're
ADU
it,
land.
right?
Yeah.
And so we have models that go from 320 square feet to about 1,150. We have about 16 models presently. We still do custom stuff. But at
Sure.
the end of the day, so there's two issues that we address with the ADU. One is availability, attainability, and everybody's got a different number of housing units that we're short. Whatever we're short today, we're going to be short more in 5 and 10 and 20 years, right? Because we've been underbuilding now for, since the 60s. We've been absolutely underbuilding. So we're just going to keep getting shorter. So whatever the number is, I'll do credit to, your reference there at the NAHB. The number is going to keep going up. And by the
Right.
way, it's a global issue.
Yep.
So we look at it, and I figure that our forecast is that it will be over 2 million ADUs in California, and that in the next 15 years, and I think it could be 10, there will be at least 20 million in the US. There are about 280 million needed globally. The ADU is brilliant, and I commend California for finally getting something right, and zoning for these ADUs.
Right. That's
There's
right.
some actual leadership there, and there's some really, really important people at UC Berkeley,
Right.
Turner Center for Innovative Housing, and some various other places who do great work in this stuff. But so you've got the affordability, you've got the availability aspect, and then you got the resilience aspect. And I always come back to the resilience aspect, Dave. I apologize, but
That's okay.
to my view, if you remember our resilience deficit in the US here, where we've got 25, $35 trillion worth of single family homes that are at real risk. 77% of the US is in extreme risk zones for natural disaster. So that's a lot of assets. So let's say we start building ADUs. Now, if we build them the same old way, what have we done? We've poured more fuel on the fire. We put more investment dollars into the same old stuff. My view is if you don't solve availability while solving resilience, you've solved neither. Now, I'm not going to be around to rebuild everything in 50 years, but it's all going down.
Yeah, for sure. I don't disagree with that whatsoever, and I do think the ADU market is hot right now. It's popping up everywhere. I mean, there's good, bad, and indifferent. You see it all over LinkedIn now. I'll use Boxable as an example, and I know there's people that are for it, against it, or think they'll fail, or whatever the case is. But the reality of it is, they got thousands of people wanting to put orders in.
Sure.
That's how hot it is, regardless of where they end up in the future. So I do think it's a very real market, and I also think that for the areas like California, these high flood, high fire areas, if you're going to be doing an ADU, you might as well you better do something that's going to make it through a fire or something else. It makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Look, people, like this comes back to what I said, people know their problems in here, right?
Yep.
Yes, it's nice to have an ADU in the backyard. It does a lot for you. It's a gym, it's an office, it's an extra living space for your aging parents and whatnot. Or it's a rental, whatever it is. It's a very, very smart asset. and it's a
Sure.
very smart thing for the U.S. to do. It solves a lot of economic and socioeconomic problems and equity problems to some degree. But if you do not do it right, you're stumped. You're going to be just in the same place. Look, if you're in Northern California, Santa Rosa burned down in October 17, right? They just flooded this winter. So
Yeah.
they had the other side of the spectrum issue 5 years later, right? If they rebuild, if they put more assets in that backyard with ADUs, they're going to burn down and flood out the same old way. So you just have to break this cycle. My view is, the reason we launched Resilience ADU was try to get more product out there to a wider audience
Mhm.
at a kind of a lower price point rather than a custom home and whatnot. But it also begins to solve the issue because we can do huge volume on that, right?
Sure.
And
I love it.
and you're right. Everybody's chasing this market. Everybody, I think it's a little unfortunate that some of the players are not. There's a lot of, let's say, younger players and early stage players who are, overstating their maybe their capacity or what they have. But the consumer absolutely is after this. My daughter sent me the other day some company that's doing ADUs that had not built one yet. They had a bunch of beautiful renders. They had 77,000 Instagram followers.
Yeah.
The demand is there.
Oh, it's definitely 100% there.
Yeah.
They reach out to us daily with new manufacturers coming online, wanting to come on the show and things of that nature. So it's definitely happened. All right, we're about out of time here. I want to put two more comments up. Gary Fleischer, the mod coach, he said biggest problem in the federal government is they don't have a building code except for a HUD.
State building codes control, regional building codes control.
Yeah.
The U.S. government sending down mandates from above is always kind of a double-edged sword. So we'll see. But look, at the end of the day, the consumers in every state just have to start jumping ugly at these policymakers. Yeah. And more to the point, they have the power to control their own destiny.
I mean, for sure.
The heck with building code, build right.
Well, there's a novel idea, isn't it? Build right.
Yeah.
There was a time we did that, with the knowledge that we had.
Yeah, that's right.
With the knowledge that we had.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last comment here real quick, and then we got to call it wrap. Structural composite panels are like Legos and simplify quality assemblies to be resilient and affordable. I know you agree with that.
Greg's right. I mean, he's 3 for 3 today. I think he gets the award for the best comments.
Yeah, for sure. Good to see you, George Ryman.
Was pretty good too.
Yeah. Well, Henry's got some good ones in here as well, we always have a good mix. And I want to say hi to Diana. We haven't seen Diana in a while. Diana Wolf, she's big into the hempcrete and plastic movement and recycling and tiny hemp houses. You got any comments on hemp?
Not really. I mean, I don't really know it well enough. It's a novel approach. It has some attributes. I wish them the best.
Can you use it in concrete? I hear people are starting to use it in concrete instead of using fiberglass. And hemp doesn't burn.
You can.
Hemp does not burn.
Yeah, you can. And, there's a lot of great, really a lot of great research being done in the concrete world at this point, and innovation being done to green it, to make the production of cement less carbony, et cetera. Our approach to that is very simple. In an RSG, if you look at an RSG building versus commercial building,
right?
Commercial building have about 9 inches of concrete. Well, we'll have a panel in the middle, so we'll have 5 inches of concrete, 3 on one and 2 on the other.
Right.
So right there, I've just reduced your carbon by 40%. I think that, so that gets us down the curve of, climate change benefit and decarbonization with a very simple, again, some of this stuff is very simple, Dave.
Yeah, we make it complicated, and it's if you make it so complicated that the consumer can't figure it out, sometimes that's why we're so complicated.
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, Ken, thanks for hopping on with us today and talking about, the rising need for affordable, durable, and resilient homes. You definitely are a leader and on the forefront of the change that is happening in the marketplace, not only with your system, but as an advocate for it throughout the United States and the world. So we appreciate you being on. And because we are doing this show today, we want to make sure that we, support the people out there that support us. And again, I'm going to put it up here one more time. time. You know, if you're interested in helping the 40,000 plus that have passed away and all the others that are out there from this horrible earthquake that has happened, there's the information right there. Please donate. We have factories all around the world. I don't know if people remember when Ukraine happened. You know, we have factories that are building offsite modular in Ukraine that were reaching out to us. So, you know, we're always going to support everybody that supports us. And, you know, hopefully if you do make a donation, it goes towards building it better and getting people back in their homes. So, Ken, awesome show. Thank you for joining us today. Did we miss anything?
No, we're pretty good at this, right, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I still feel like I struggle on day to day, but now we're getting good at it and we have fun doing it. And I think that's the important part.
This is always good to see you.
You as well. All right. Don't go anywhere. We'll come right back to you. Everybody else out there, we will see you this Wednesday for a product spotlight and again on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Do not miss it. Ken, I'll come back to you in a moment. Other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye now.